Amazing moment revealed. Cleaning ladies touching bubbles inspire millionaire CEO's unexpected transformation. Ethan Miller stared out at the sprawling metropolis from his sleek penthouse, the city buzzing, teeming with life below, yet he felt like a ghost in his own high-rise prison. The imminent merger loomed over him like a storm cloud, pressing down, igniting discomfort. The numbers danced in his head, millions to gain, millions to lose. Yet, the hollow sense of accomplishment fueled a gnawing emptiness deep in his chest. Memories of his cramped Queens apartment, where he shared space with just his mother and watched Rosa, the cleaning lady, smear smiles across their lives with colorful bubble tricks, reminded him of a simpler, happier time. Amid his bored-esque cutthroat discussions, Ethan hesitated, caught between loyalty to the company and the gnawing moral questions tugging at his conscience. Was success merely a financial ascent? Or was it the truth behind connections he'd long abandoned in pursuit of profit? His heart raced, wrestling with the dilemma. The path paved with gold or old values of kindness and community. His focus shattered when, from the hallway, a ringing laugh caught his ear, followed by Rosa's voice, animated and sincere. She was talking about how much children loved her bubbles, filling rooms with laughter. A strange urge pulled at him, igniting a sliver of curiosity. This moment felt like a sinkhole opening beneath him. He needed to observe this magic she wielded. With a sense of desperation, he grabbed his coat and headed toward the community center, ignoring the voice in his head that urged caution. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he arrived, the scene unfolded like a vivid dream. Children squealed with delight, eyes wide as they chased after Rosa's bubbles, entranced by the shifting colors. Each pop sounded like scattered pieces of Ethan's childhood joy. His heart ached. Nostalgia hit him harder than any business proposal. Watching the innocent glee surrounding him, he felt a pulse of warmth tether him to the moment, while shadows of his identity loomed behind him, demanding attention to the merger pressing to be finalized. With each passing moment spent enamored by the simplicity of joy, a visceral conflict boiled within him. The cheerful laughter felt like a direct assault on his sterile world designed to deliver profits. Rosa, with her heart for creativity, illuminated paths that stood stark in contrast to the cold efficiency of corporate ambition. He recalled childhood lessons from his mother. Connection had weight. Ambition was meaningless void of it. Ethan paced in his office later that night, the city illuminated with stars unlike the ones in his childhood sky, and the merger documents a heavy burden before him. Was there still a part of him that could step into a life of real impact? The tension between his past and present twisted in his gut as he understood the choice ahead. Would he free himself from this corporate grave and fight for levels of happiness he thought were long gone? As chaos ensued in his mind, revealing shadows of his estranged father who glorified wealth over compassion, it dawned on him that ambition had been his only compass. Now, standing on the edge of an ethical abyss, Ethan questioned if the guiding stars he once wished on were merely a mirage taunting him from the horizon. But a sudden phone buzz broke his focus, his past ringing with a familiar voice, a call he never anticipated. The stakes heightened, heart racing, leaving him dangling in uncertainty. Ethan hesitated for a split second before answering. The familiar voice of his younger sister, Mia, crackled through the earpiece. "Ethan, you won't believe what happened today at the school." Her excitement was palpable, a stark contrast to the static weight pressing down on him. He could hear the joy spilling from her words, the genuine enthusiasm he had long since forgotten. As she recounted her day, competing for a spelling bee, he felt a twinge of guilt for being disconnected. "I'm so proud of you, Mia," Ethan managed, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Each syllable was imbued with both warmth and sorrow. "It was so much fun. Oh, and you know Ms. Roberts? She said I could help out with the art program after school." The realization struck him deep down. She was creating connections, and building a community through something as simple as art, cherishing the values he'd been too consumed to live out. That is amazing. Yeah, you should come see it sometime. We could use your help, she hinted, her voice softening. Sure, Ethan replied, the word escaping him before he could evaluate its implications. Just like that, an unplanned commitment stirred within him. He felt fragile, suspended between the man he had become and the brother he wished to be. After the call, Ethan sank into the plush leather couch, consumed by a spiraling introspection. What kind of brother was he when all he provided were shallow check-ins, wrapped in corporate pretense? He could hear the echoes of laughter from the community center, a stark reminder of his estrangement from the genuine connections that had once defined him. It began to dawn on him that he was on a trajectory of isolation, even as he climbed the corporate ladder, soaring into a world that was distanced and cold. The merger loomed over him like a specter, entwined with his awakening. If he proceeded, he would consolidate power, but at what cost? On the surface, victory gleamed, yet beneath, it felt like a fragmented dream. He recalled the joy in Rose's bubbles, the way they floated free, ephemeral, and light. What if, instead of shooting for another top-dollar deal, he stepped back and nurtured the passion of the people? Thoughts raced through his mind, building a burgeoning sense of urgency. He had to act, but how? It wasn't enough to merely observe. He needed to confront his reality, no matter how conflicting it felt, to shift focus from profit to purpose. Perhaps a part of him had been waiting for this moment all along. He rose from the couch, a plan crystallizing. Tomorrow, he would meet with Rosa, propose a partnership that combined her creative efforts with his business acumen, and see where passion could lead them both. There was a community that needed nurturing, and he could be that force of change. As he prepared to rest his weary mind, a nagging thought crept back in. Did he have the courage to abandon the guise of the numbers-driven executive he had tried so hard to become? Would his colleagues see him as a traitor, or could they embrace this new vision? Doubt clung to him, but so did a flicker of hope ignited by the prospect of building something real. With that hope came a new challenge, to confront his board tomorrow and redefine what it meant to lead. A shiver of anticipation ran through him. The moment of reckoning was near, and he would either rise or fall. What he didn't know was that standing at the crossroads often reveals unforeseen allies and hidden adversaries waiting to strike. The following morning arrived with hazy sunlight spilling into Ethan's apartment, the kind of light that felt foreign yet awakening. He paced the confines of his kitchen, nerves simmering as he sipped his coffee. Each sip only served to remind him of the risk. He was about to take, the risk of rebranding himself, both publicly and privately. His phone buzzed incessantly on the counter, a series of text notifications from his assistant urging him about the day's meetings. He acknowledged them, but none sparked his interest as much as the thought of his upcoming conversation with Rosa. A partnership built on creativity was a leap into uncharted territory, significantly deviating from his conservative, profit-oriented path. What if this didn't go as planned? What if his colleagues laughed at him for wanting to be a part of something less corporate? The conflicted thoughts echoed in his mind as he ignored the urgencies of the corporate world for a fleeting moment. Dressed in a well-fitted charcoal suit, Ethan viewed himself in the mirror. A stranger stared back. This polished man, with tight-lipped smiles and sharp features, looked so utterly corporate. He pondered whether this exterior would hinder his newfound direction. He needed to embody the man he aspired to be, not just a facade for meetings and presentations. Ethan arrived at Rosa's studio, which was an explosion of colors, bustling with energy. The space buzzed with laughter and creativity, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of a conference room. As he entered, the scent of paint and fresh canvas wrapped around him, transporting him far from his corporate reality. Rosa greeted him with warmth, her hands speckled with paint, as she beamed with a contagious enthusiasm. "Ethan, so glad you could make it. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about how we could work together," he replied, trying to grasp the raw passion in her artistry while grappling with the polished world he knew so well. They sat together among scattered art supplies, and Ethan found himself sharing elements of his corporate life, the pressures, the mergers, and his growing desire for change. Rosa listened intently, her expression a mixture of interest and empathy. "Have you ever thought about how art connects people? It brings them together, creates community, she suggested, her voice animated. Her words unearthed something deep within him, a longing for belonging and connection he had overlooked in the pursuits of ambition. I have, he admitted, but I'm not sure how to balance my corporate responsibilities with that. Rosa smiled, undeterred. Every relationship starts with vulnerability. You have to be willing to show who you really are, bubbles and all. As her metaphors resonated within him, a mixture of apprehension and determination took hold. Could he really embrace vulnerability in the highly competitive environment where he had always felt the need to project strength? Let us build something that speaks to people, rather than just the bottom line, he suggested, feeling a rush of authenticity as he spoke. There was a clarity in that moment, a defining shift from his previous mindset. Seconds turned into minutes, and as they discussed ideas, he envisioned a collaborative event that showcased local artists while incorporating elements of community engagement. The concept felt liberating. Yet beneath the excitement lingered the reminder of the risk he was taking, the fear of ridicule, the possibility of failing to deliver on the very ideals he was trying to champion. As the initial enthusiasm settled into plans, a thought surfaced: how would he present this new vision to his board later? The realization sank in. He hadn't just committed to Rosa, he had committed to himself, to change. Still, doubts crept in like shadows in the corners of his mind. Was he ready to risk everything for this budding dream? Suddenly, a text from Mia popped up on his phone, her innocent excitement poignant with a reminder of what truly mattered. Can't wait to show you the art program. The message ignited his resolve, further reinforcing the importance of the connections he'd almost lost. With a newfound sense of determination, Ethan gathered his notes and stood up, prepared to face this dual challenge, building a partnership with Rosa while redefining his approach to leadership. The moment felt monumental, yet he couldn't shake off the thought: what consequences would he face if he failed to convince them the new direction was worth pursuing? Determined, he left the studio, the echoes of laughter following him out. As he headed towards his next meeting, the looming confrontation with his board consumed him, a foundation built on numbers faced with a turning tide of purpose. Would they understand? Would they embrace this new vision? Or would he stand alone at the edge of his conviction? The answer danced just out of reach, leaving Ethan with both anxiety and hope as he braced himself for a pivotal moment. Ethan's steps echoed in the polished hallway leading to the boardroom, each footfall increasing the weight of his decision. The anticipation coursed through him, a cocktail of fear and exhilaration. This wasn't just another corporate proposal, it was an audacious bid to redefine not only his career path, but his very essence. As he reached the boardroom, he paused outside the glass doors. It was a stark contrast to the vibrancy of Rosa's studio. The sterile space was dominated by long conference tables and high-backed chairs, symbols of authority and control. As he entered, murmurs faded, replaced by scrutinizing gazes. The energy felt suffocating. Once seated, Ethan took a deep breath, recalling Rosa's words about vulnerability. He wasn't just representing numbers, charts, or projections. He was presenting a vision rooted in personal authenticity. This is it, he thought. Time to shake them awake. Thank you all for joining, he began, his voice steadier than he felt. I want to propose a new direction for our next project. A collaboration with local artists to create a community engagement initiative. Silence enveloped the room. A few executives exchanged confused glances. Community engagement? One board member echoed, his brow furrowed. But how does that align with our primary objective of increasing profit margins? The question sliced through his confidence, compelling him to confront the very skepticism he was grappling with. Well, I believe that by fostering connections through art, we can build a stronger brand, he replied, forcing his voice to steady. It's risky, but authentic engagement could yield long-term loyalty. The raised eyebrows continued, skepticism palpable. Ethan pressed on, his thoughts racing. How could he convey the value of relatable connections in a world dominated by data? He shifted his strategy, opening up about his own journey, the isolation he felt amidst corporate success, and how uncovering Rosa's world had ignited a longing for connection. I was lost in a space of numbers, only to realize that a true legacy isn't carved from higher profits, but from shared experiences, he stated, a visceral urgency guiding his words. Art can bridge gaps. It brings people together inspires community dialogue, and ultimately enhances our brand identity. Their expressions softened, but only slightly. Uncertainty lingered. And the funding for this initiative? Another member interjected, eyes narrowing. How do you propose we allocate resources effectively without jeopardizing our bottom line? He paused, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down on him. There lay the crux of his struggle, the balance between pursuing his passion and defending the financial realities of running a business. I'm proposing we dedicate a small portion of our marketing budget towards this, he stated, but I believe the return on investment both in community goodwill and employee morale could far exceed the initial expenditure. The murmuring began again, but now there was a hint of interest mixed with skepticism. How do you plan to measure success? An executive asked. By engagement metrics and community feedback, he detailed, heart racing. We'll track attendance, social media interactions, and testimonials from participants. It's transparent and measurable. His resolve wavered as he saw the walls of corporate rigidity still standing before him. A rush of self-doubt threatened to unravel him. Had he underestimated the board's unwillingness to embrace such a radical shift? Would they truly dismiss his pleas for change? Just as despair threatened to creep back in, a memory surged forth, Rosa's exuberant laughter, the freedom of creativity draped around him like a warm embrace. He realized his proposal was not merely for the boardroom or even for financial clarification. It was about reclaiming his purpose and reconnecting with what truly brought him joy. We have an opportunity to redefine how we interact with our audience, he said, channeling a desperate passion. Art speaks in colors and expressions that numbers simply can't convey. If we can be at the forefront of this movement, then we can create something truly impactful. Silence hung again as faces moved from doubt to contemplation. Yet, as he stole glances, he noticed the lingering tension. Would the board break into laughter or ridicule? Or perhaps embrace this shift and see him as a visionary? Time felt suspended as the fate of his proposal hung in the air. Finally, one member spoke, edged with curiosity. Let us dig deeper into the specifics. But be prepared, Ethan, we will want measurable results. As he nodded, the beginning of a hopeful exchange, he felt an overwhelming wave. This was just the start. Would he continue to walk the precarious line between the old and new, or would the board's response demolish his dreams? And with that thought, Ethan understood he was on the brink of transformation, his next steps riddled with uncertainty yet ripe with possibility. As he left the room, energies buzzing, he couldn't shake the sensation that the hardest confrontation awaited him, his own reluctance to embrace vulnerability as a strength. Would he allow himself to navigate this new realm with authenticity, even amid corporate pressures? The questions loomed large as he stepped into the dimly lit hallway, reminding him that the road ahead was winding and fraught with risk. But for the first time, Ethan felt the thrill of hope and determination. You could build a bridge to what lay ahead, and he was willing to try. The question remained, would he have the courage to follow through? Ethan leaned against the cool marble wall outside the boardroom, the noise of the meeting still echoing in his ears. He fought to steady his breath, his heart racing from the adrenaline that coursed through him. He had taken a step into the unknown, and while he felt charged, he also sensed the heavy weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. The board's cautious reception stung deep, forcing him to confront his internal dialogue. What if they never see my vision? He thought, replaying the skeptical expressions on their faces. What if this is just another dream I'm too scared to let go of? Each question gnawed at his confidence, threatening to unravel the threads of courage he had so painstakingly woven together in that moment. He recalled Rosa's vibrant studio, the cacophony of colors and textures that swirled around him. The memories contrasted sharply with the starkness of the boardroom. It was easy to lose himself in data and projections, but true art, true connection, lay in the chaos of creativity. Could he find a way to embody that chaos amidst the sterile confines of corporate expectations? Determined to maintain his momentum, Ethan walked down the corridor, allowing his thoughts to flow freely. He weighed the possibility of seeking a mentor, someone who could guide him through the complex dance of authenticity and authority. The mere idea thrilled him. Could he find a way to reconcile his innate need for connection with the board's desire for bottom-line results? His mind drifted back to the proposal. He needed to devise a strategy that threaded both visions, one that appealed to the heart and satisfied the mind. The essence of his push for artistic engagement was not just about community. It was about fostering a culture within the company. What if he could create team art projects that not only served the marketing initiative, but also reinforced collaboration among his colleagues? The thought struck him like a bolt of lightning. Here lay a dual opportunity: showcase the benefits of art in the corporate world while building relationships within his teams. As he simmered in the idea, the bubbling excitement washed over his earlier doubts. He pulled out his phone and began drafting a plan, his fingers flying along the screen. Inspiration flowed as he envisioned an internal competition, a challenge where teams could unleash their creativity, creating art that resonated with their personal experiences. The product could serve as a marketing campaign while nurturing a sense of belonging among the team members. In order to lead, I must empower, he concluded, his mind racing with possibilities. Fueled by this newfound clarity, he ventured towards Rosa's studio. The chaotic melodies of brushes against canvas welcomed him like an old friend, easing the knot of tension still hovering from the meeting. He entered, greeted by the familiar smells of paint and turpentine. "Ethan, you look charged," Rosa exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Her exuberance reminded him that he had reconnected with a part of himself that had long been buried under layers of corporate expectations. As they talked, Ethan shared his revised vision with her. Rosa listened intently, her expressions shifting from intrigue to pride. "You're not just trying to change the company. You're setting out to change yourself," she remarked, her words penetrating the depths of his resolve. That's where the real transformation lies. Her insight hit him hard. This was not merely a proposal. It was a rebirth and expression of his true self amidst the pressing confines of corporate culture. But with this awareness also came a stark realization. Real change demanded unwavering commitment. As night fell, shadows crept into the studio, reflecting both his exhilaration and fears. He felt a compulsion to serve as an example not just to his peers, but to himself. Would he embrace this path, confront potential failure, or retreat to the safety of the familiar? Ethan's thoughts spiraled as he wrestled with the implications of his endeavor. This was just the beginning, and the challenges ahead seemed daunting. What if the board ultimately rejected his ideas, casting him back into the realm of mere numbers and forecasts? With renewed job ambition but plagued by self-doubt, he stepped back into the world that awaited outside, the challenge now clearer than ever. How could he translate this burning desire into action without losing sight of who he was? The path forward had unearthed a profound truth. This journey was as much about professional development as it was about personal awakening. And as he strolled through the dim-lit streets, he understood that the real challenge would come not just from the corporate world, but from within himself. Would he let his passion shine brightly enough to ignite change, or would he falter when faced with adversity? His resolve steeled. The pressing question lingered. What radical steps would he take to ensure that both he and his vision would be seen and heard? Ethan woke the next morning with a sense of urgency pulsating through him, an electric current that propelled him out of bed. The doubts that had taunted him before had shifted. Now, they transformed into fuel. He could almost see the outline of his vision, clearer than ever, like a landscape revealing itself as the morning fog lifted. His first task was to sketch out the details of the internal competition he had envisioned. He poured coffee into a mug, each sip building the bricks of boldness he needed to confront the day. He had to sell himself. The adrenaline from last night's meeting remained, tinged with possibility. But as he settled into his workspace, he realized that excitement wouldn't be enough. This time, he would need a well-structured plan. That he opened his laptop and began typing the framework for the competition, the art of innovation. Teams would consist of cross-departmental members, encouraging engagement from the remote sectors of the organization. The artistic challenge would encapsulate not only creativity, but also collaboration. He set out to find metrics that could provide tangible outcomes, enhance teamwork, improve morale, and an innovative marketing strategy. As he concentrated on the digital page before him, the clarity faded for a brief moment, succumbed to the daunting shadows of self-doubt. What if his colleagues found the idea frivolous? Inspired art and creativity could easily be dismissed in favor of hard numbers. Would he be exposing himself to further ridicule? Pushing aside the intrusive thoughts, Ethan reminded himself that real change often requires bold movements and unwavering commitment. Gripping the edges of the table, he leaned in and began drafting a persuasive presentation. Each line was a calculated strategy to demonstrate how this initiative aligned with corporate goals. He would have to appeal to the board's financial side while emphasizing the intangible benefits of fostering creativity. Hours passed in a haze of focused ambition. He crafted bullet points on potential outcomes, drawing parallels to successful companies that had embraced creativity in their cultures. Each success story renewed his determination. Finally, he stepped away from his computer, exhausted yet exhilarated. It was time to practice. He recorded himself delivering the presentation, watching as he spoke with intensity and passion. But notes weren't enough. He needed feedback. There was a flicker of anxiety as he considered who to turn to for advice. But then, Rose's face flashed in his mind the way she had believed in him when he had doubted. Her insights in the studio had anchored him. But now, he needed to expand his circle. Ethan texted a few trusted colleagues, those who shared his enthusiasm for innovation and creativity, asking them if they would be willing to review his presentation. The clock was ticking. He needed feedback to refine his approach and bolster his strategy. That sense of connection began to dissolve his self-imposed isolation. His phone pinged almost instantly. Responses flooded in with support, acceptance, and excitement. Their willingness to engage ignited something deeper within him. A budding realization emerged. Collaborative strength could underpin his campaign. Just as he had envisioned for the internal competition, as the evening approached, he met with one of his colleagues, Mark, in a nearby cafe. They sat in a cozy corner, a stark contrast to the sterile offices that usually bound Ethan's discourse. Over steaming cups of coffee, he shared his draft. Mark listened eagerly, nodding along, offering suggestions that deepened the content and breadth of his proposal. Why not call it a collaborative art initiative instead of just a competition? Mark proposed, stirring cream into his coffee. Make it feel more inclusive. If it's about creating a culture, maybe we should emphasize teamwork, not just winning. Ethan felt a rush of excitement, the gears in his mind turning faster. Mark's insight opened up new possibilities, and suddenly Ethan found himself envisioning a series of workshops where teams could learn from artists and create together, reinforcing relationships beyond competitive elements. As they left the cafe, the world seemed infused with potential. The conversation shifted Ethan's perception. This was no longer just about gaining acceptance, but about creating something meaningful that changed his environment. And yet, a whisper of doubt lingered. Could such an idea really flourish in the confines of his corporate culture? Ethan returned home, invigorated yet introspective, ready to harness the collaborative fire Mark had ignited. In the comforting dimness of his living room, he recognized that he had crossed a threshold, no longer merely reacting to uncertainty, but actively embracing it. His heart raced as he contemplated the upcoming board meeting. In some hidden corner of his mind, another question materialized. Who could stand in the way of genuine creativity, once embraced? He leaned back, mentally preparing for the confrontation ahead. Everything he had cultivated was now at stake. The urgency drove him forward. Did he possess the resolve to carry this vision through, no matter the response? Determined, he scrutinized every potential outcome. The moment of truth was approaching, and he was ready to face it, no matter the consequences. Would he embrace the vital change his vision promised, or would he slip back into the shadows of self-doubt? The stakes were higher than ever, and Ethan realized his journey was far from over. Ethan stood in front of the bathroom mirror the morning of the board meeting, his reflection a battlefield of anticipation and anxiety. He adjusted the collar of his shirt, trying to exude confidence while grappling with the familiar specter of self-doubt. What if all his efforts crumbled under the scrutiny of seasoned executives? The thought twisted in his stomach, and he steeled himself. He reminded himself that he was no longer alone. He had allies supporting his vision. Stepping out of his apartment, Ethan felt the harsh bite of the early morning air, invigorating yet jarring. Each step toward the office felt monumental, a blend of hope and trepidation guiding his movements. He replayed the key points of his presentation in his mind, visualizing the reactions of those in the room, and focusing on his goal, cultivating a culture of innovation. As he entered the building, the usual hum of activity felt amplified, each sound resonating in his head. He moved through the corridors toward the conference room, acknowledging nods and smiles from co-workers who had rallied behind him. Their warmth stoked the embers of his resolve, but his thoughts spiraled. What if the idea felt goofy to the board? Once inside the conference room, Ethan set up his laptop, ensuring everything was in place: slide transitions, clickable links, and audio features. He rearranged the projector and flicked the lights, plunged into calculating the perfect atmosphere for his presentation. Would it engage them, or would their eyes glaze over with skepticism? As the board members filed in, Ethan was struck by their dynamic presence. He took note of their expressions, some actively eager, others reserved, arms crossed. His heart raced as he recognized the crucial nature of the next few moments. Setting aside his anxieties, he drew strength from the ideas Mark had contributed. This wasn't merely a pitch, it was so much more. "Good morning, everyone," Ethan began, his voice steady and clear. "I appreciate you taking the time to listen to an initiative I believe can create real change within our organization." He paused, making eye contact with a few members to convey authenticity. With each slide, he poured his passion into the presentation, narrating how the art of innovation could transform not just productivity, but morale, a merging of art and commerce that exemplified progressive thinking. As he spoke of the workshops and the collaborative spirit he envisioned, he could see interest peaking. Some were nodding, while others leaned closer, their arms uncrossing. Questions began to flow, and with each inquiry, Ethan felt a surge of confidence. It wasn't merely about defending his concept, but instead, it evolved into a collaborative dialogue. When he answered with enthusiasm, effortlessly weaving in the feedback he had received from colleagues, he noticed the shift in energy. The room was vibrating with anticipation rather than skepticism. Yet, the pivotal moment came when one of the board members, a traditionalist known for being resistant to change, spoke up. "Ethan, while I can appreciate the intention behind this initiative, how do you plan to measure its success? Innovation sounds great, yet at the end of the day, we are judged by our outputs and bottom lines." The question struck like a thunderbolt. Ethan's initial response stumbled, but as he steadied himself, a rush of clarity surged through him. He took a breath, and in that moment, everything Mark had suggested crystallized. "We will implement qualitative metrics alongside our traditional KPIs, assessing engagement, team dynamics, and outputs from these creative sessions. In addition, we'll survey participants on their experience, ensuring that the initiative remains agile and productive over time. Success will be a narrative we craft together." A ripple of nods moved through the room, and Ethan felt that flat spiral of anxiety lift. The words poured forth, fueled by the belief that this vision could, indeed, become reality. They were not mere numbers. They were reflections of growth and cultural evolution. When the presentation concluded, the buzz of conversation among the board members drowned out his inner fears momentarily. Decisions loomed ahead, and while they deliberated, Ethan reflected on the power of his journey thus far. He had stepped outside his comfort zone, advocated for creativity, and connected with others who shared his vision. He was waiting for their decision, the weight of it resting heavily on his shoulders, when the atmosphere suddenly shifted. The board wouldn't merely judge him on this idea. They were now evaluating him as a change agent within the organization. They could embrace this entirely new trajectory, or they could reject it, forcing him back into the safe confines of his previous hesitations. And then, he caught sight of Rosa in the back of the room. She had come to support him, a light of encouragement shining from her stance. The urgency in his heart surged anew. Would she see this as the pivotal moment he believed it to be? Ethan composed himself, ready for whatever decision lay ahead. Was he truly prepared for the significance of this shift? Could he wield the momentum he'd created to foster a lasting change? Armed with the collaborative spirit he'd nurtured, he waited for the board's verdict, a breath held tight within him as uncertainty loomed on the horizon. Ethan's heart pounded in rhythm with the deliberation echoes in the room. As silence fell over the board, an acute awareness arose within him. Each person seated before him represented not just authority, but a pivotal crossroads, a decision that could align his ambition with organizational willingness to evolve or shackle it back into the realm of conventionality. His breath steadied, and while he waited, he couldn't help but dissect the tension in the air. What if the board remained skeptical? What if they disregarded the collaborative spirit that had stirred momentarily in the room? His personal stakes were at their peak, woven into the fabric of every articulated idea he had shared. The instant felt monumental. The line separating success from failure seemed as thin as a thread. Rose's presence anchored him. She wasn't just a supportive face. She represented trust, understanding, and an intuitive grasp of change. Yet, could her perception of this meeting alter the course of Ethan's world? He grappled with the realization that outside validation had become more significant than he had ever considered. His self-worth precariously hinged on their decision. Then, a cushioned voice shattered the taut silence. "Ethan," the board chair said, cutting through the weight in the room. "Your presentation was thorough, and your passion is evident." He hesitated, collecting his thoughts, and for an instant, Ethan believed he could feel projected approval shining down on him. "I have to raise a concern, though," the chair continued. "We are aware of the need for innovation, but our primary objective remains profitability. How do you plan to balance these dual imperatives?" Ethan's stomach twisted anew. Every instinct told him it was time to pivot his focus, to appeal to their underlying fear of risk while riding the wave of creativity he had fostered during his proposal. "I understand completely," he responded, feeling adrenaline course through him. "The beauty of the art of innovation is its very structure. By fostering creativity, we transform not just our culture, but also our outputs. Engaged employees yield happy customers. Happy customers drive sales. This doesn't merely serve to tick a box or introduce something whimsical, it has measurable impacts on our bottom line." A slight nod from one of the more skeptical executives stirred something emboldened in him. Ethan focused on the intricacies of his plan, emphasizing synergies between innovation and profitability. The courage building within him transformed doubt into articulation, words shaping a new vision honed by the very fears that had once threatened to undermine him. The moments stretched, the restlessness palpable as the board sought to connect his vision with their reality. Each question, each raised eyebrow, circulated the feeling of fighting back against a tide that insisted on conforming to traditional success metrics. In this intricately woven dance of persuasion, Ethan longed to surmount the doubts lingering within himself. Then, as the discussions grew animated, Ethan noticed Mark's reassuring thumbs up from the corner of his eye. It was a silent affirmation, a reminder of the support he had rallied and the ideas they had collectively nurtured. The metaphorical wheels of innovation began to turn in his favor. Seeing genuine engagement sparked a flicker of hope within him even as the external uncertainty loomed. As the board settled into deliberation, Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe deeply. Yet the weight of impending judgment still pressed against his chest like lead. Would they embrace the chance for transformative growth, or would they retreat into carefully crafted confines of what they deemed safe? His mind raced, grappling with gnawing possibilities and potential outcomes, each more harrowing than the last. Finally, with a sense of urgency bubbling beneath his skin, he questioned, "What if they share my vision for innovation?" He stood on the precipice of that question, craving to step into the unknown with confidence. But in that moment, another question pierced his resolve. Was he ready for the inevitable fallout if they chose differently? What parts of himself would he lose in that rejection? With that realization hovering menacingly, Ethan prepared for the board's final decision, the culmination of a journey painted with uncertainty. The tide of change could very well lift him toward new pinnacles of success or pull him back into the shadowy depths of self-doubt. As the board's deliberation reached its climax, Ethan's thoughts crystallized into a singular truth. The moment of revelation had come, but what lay on the other side remained a confounding mystery, veiled in decision and consequence. A hush enveloped the room as the board members exchanged subtle glances that felt charged with expectancy. Ethan's pulse quickened at the sight of their deliberation. What would unfold? Each moment felt pregnant with the weight of decisions not only for the organization, but for him personally. The chair finally broke the taut tension. "Ethan," he began again, "we appreciate your insights on merging innovation with profitability. However, we cannot overlook our risk posture. You understand our hesitance, right? Ethan nodded, but a swell of frustration bubbled beneath his polished exterior. The same fears they held about risk had kept the company stagnant for too long, a truth he desired to impress upon them. I completely understand, he replied, but the discontent had ignited a flicker of defiance. Respecting their fears didn't mean he needed to cower from them. The moment called for a bold assertion. Change does not come without stakes. However, the greater risk lies in doing nothing, he continued, planting his feet firmly on the ground. Consider the market trends. Our competitors are already capitalizing on innovation while we cling to methods of the past. By letting fear dictate our decisions, we risk losing not just customers, but our talented workforce, who crave a vibrant, engaging environment. The board members seemed taken aback by his directness, an unfamiliar spark flickering through the room. Despite the anxiety coiling in his stomach, Ethan seized the opportunity. What if we reimagined how we measure our success metrics? What if we pursued an innovation strategy that positioned us as industry leaders rather than laggards? Failure is just a stepping stone on the path to greatness. His words, born from intense passion and frustration, rang with an unexpected confidence. Was this the breakthrough he had been waiting for? The moment where he could bridge the chasm between his aspirations and their fears? His gaze roamed the faces before him, some skeptical, others intrigued, but all listening intently. The chair seemed to mull over his latest points. You're suggesting a radical shift in our corporate identity, he replied, this time less guarded. Can you provide us with specific strategies or examples from other organizations that have successfully made such transitions? Ethan's mind raced. Here lay a defining moment. He needed to pull from the depths of his knowledge and insight. Yes, let me illustrate, he began, forcing his intellect into overdrive. Consider companies like Spotify and Netflix. Both turned traditional models on their head, embracing innovation in ways that transformed not just their products, but their entire brand. Their focus on employee engagement has fueled their success and retention. They have thrived not by shying away from risks, but by embedding them into their DNA. As he spoke, Ethan felt a flickering light within. He realized the innate ability he possessed to connect ideas, to weave complex narratives where others saw catastrophe. This was more than just a presentation. It was a reflection of his own growth. Every stumbling block he had faced thus far had brought him here, urging him to amplify his voice, to insist on being heard. The dialogue among the board grew more animated, and Ethan saw a glimpse of openness in their body language. With each contribution he offered, he could sense their curiosity blossoming, penetrating through the armor of skepticism that typically suffocated innovative thought. Encouraged, he leaned into the moment, keenly aware that this was no longer merely a pitch, it was a collaboration. You've inspired us to consider some possibilities, the chair admitted, his voice softer. But we must also ask ourselves, can our current structure support this approach? We fear this requires a cultural shift that could falter under pressure. Ethan felt the stakes rising, the recognition of potential consequences swimming through the air. The decision in that room was more than professional. It was deeply personal. Who was Ethan if he failed this initiative? What legacy would remain? Taking a deep breath, he resolved to respond with fortitude. Culture is indeed the crux of this initiative. We must cultivate a mindset that embraces experimentation and learns from failure rather than punishes it. If I may, I could outline a leadership structure that encourages this transition, one that fully engages employees and fosters continuous innovation. He offered in that crucial moment. He caught a glimpse of potential, not just for the company, but for himself, a fleeting shadow of fear diffusing in the excitement of possibility. As the board members leaned closer, grappling with their reservations, a new question burgeoned in Ethan's mind. What would he be willing to sacrifice to solidify this vision? The battles of self-doubt loomed ahead, begging to be confronted. And as they mulled over the consequences of their choices, one chilling thought crept in: were they ready to gamble the unlikely on a spark of innovation ignited by a single proposal? The stakes had never felt higher, and as the gears of transformation began to turn, Ethan sensed that the true test was just beginning, one that would reveal who he truly was in the process. Ethan stood before the board, feeling both exhilarated and vulnerable. The air was thick with anticipation, a living, breathing testament to his journey through both personal and professional metamorphosis. This moment was more than just a proposal. It was the culmination of lessons learned, values rediscovered, and a new identity birthed in the crucible of uncertainty. He had taken the leap of faith to present the art of innovation initiative, advocating for a symbiotic relationship between creativity and commerce. As the deliberations unfolded, he felt a gnawing familiarity with the apprehensions and aspirations of the board members mirrored his own internal struggles. Yet, this time, he was grounded, fully aware of his own worth and the legitimacy of his ideas. As they discussed various facets of the initiative, Ethan harnessed the energy in the room, curiosity sparked by the possibilities. Board members exchanged thoughts, debating metrics of success and the prospect of cultural change within the organization. Their inquiries weren't dismissive, but rather rounded considerations of a profound shift. For the first time, Ethan realized he was not merely presenting numbers. He was weaving a narrative of revival. The beauty lies in creating engagement, he responded passionately. When employees feel invested in something meaningful, we optimize innovation and enhance productivity organically. The board absorbed his words as they pieced together the picture he had painted: the chance to break free from conventions and redefine the essence of their company. As discussions continued, the board chair took the floor, a more contemplative demeanor than before. Ethan, while embracing change remains a commendable venture, how do we ensure that financial stability accompanies this cultural pivot? Ethan leaned into the challenge. I have actively researched high-performing companies that embraced cultural innovation. They didn't merely let creativity flourish, they embedded it into their mission. Firms like Google have thrived precisely because they maintain a workforce driven by autonomy and purpose. Imagine if we infused those principles into our framework. A murmuring ripple swept through the room, punctuated by contemplative nods. His conviction was palpable. These weren't forced ideas but visions forged through realization. The urgency of fostering community connections had become clear, the same connections that had once been simplistically embodied in Rosa's whimsical bubbles. With an infectious enthusiasm, he proposed engaging local artists in collaborative projects aimed at employees, igniting creativity while also enhancing community relationships. What if, he suggested, we not only measure participation and collaboration, but also the inspiring stories that emerge? This isn't just about transactions, but transitioning into deeply rooted relationships. Their inquisitiveness deepened. They were visibly engaged. Each question from the board unlocked further innovation, and in those exchanges, Ethan recognized the tangible transformations nurtured within him and how genuine dialogue meant transcending traditional boundaries. After an extended deliberation, a hand went up from a usually stoic board member. Ethan, he began earnestly, I believe you've transformed my understanding of our strategies today. Your vision gives us fresh pathways to explore. Our current operations have bound us to an outdated framework. Let us permit experimentation. As murmurs of agreement emerged, an electrifying thrill leaped through him, casting aside the remnants of self-doubt. The moment felt surreal. It wasn't just a victory, this was a pivot point. Let us start with a pilot program, the chair proposed, an open invitation for immediate action, to measure engagement through creative workshops inspired by your proposals. Relief washed over Ethan. It wasn't just approval, but collaboration, a collective venture toward shared growth. He could now envision how his commitment to authentic engagement would transition into a multifaceted transformation, not just for himself, but for the company at large. It was more than professional advancement. It was a natural evolution toward values that resonated with him profoundly. As he left the boardroom, a warm sunset cast hues across the skyline, an image that echoed the outline of his new journey. He had conquered self-doubt, embraced vulnerability, and fostered transformative dialogue. Ethan no longer felt like a phantom drifting in the corporate ether. He had carved his identity with resolve and clarity. As he stepped outside, the air felt different. Each breath signified a newfound purpose, not only driven by the thrill of success, but fueled by a heart reconnecting with its roots. He recalled the laughter of children chasing bubbles, a soft laughter woven into his spirit, guiding him to nurture connections that once held life's simplest joys. Ethan was not just a CEO. He was a leader, an innovator, a brother, and above all, a man fully realized. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a fulfilling endeavor he had long craved. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that empower you to overcome and thrive. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the vision that inspires change. Comment below your reactions and theories about Ethan's transformation. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and spark their own transformative journeys. Don't wait even one more second to share.